with your bulletin, there is a scripture from Matthew 5, 1 through 12. And I just would like to read that before Pastor John comes and gives the message. And please, I hope that you'll listen to the Lord's word. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there's more of God and His rule. You're blessed when you feel you've lost what is most dear to you. Only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are. No more, no less. That's the moment you find yourselves proud owners of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. He's food and drink and the best meal you'll ever eat. You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, you find yourselves cared for. You're blessed when you get inside the world, your mind and your heart put right. Then you can see God in the outside world. You're blessed when you show people how to cooperate instead of compete or fight. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. You're blessed when your commitment to God provokes persecution. The persecution drives you even deeper into God's kingdom. Not only that, count yourselves blessed every time people put you down or throw you out or speak lies about you to discredit you. What it means is that the truth is too close for comfort, and they are even uncomfortable. You can be glad when that happens. Give a cheer, even for those they don't like it. I do, and all heaven applauds. And know that you are in good company. My prophets and witnesses have always gotten into this kind of trouble. Blessed be the name of the Lord.
Good morning, everyone. First thing I would like to say to you this morning is I need you to take me out of those monitors, if you would. They're echoing behind me, probably not bothering you, no? A little bit, okay, thanks. I would just, rumors can be not very nice things, and I wanted to, the first thing I say to you this morning is to dispense a rumor. There's been a rumor going around Blacks Harbor and the area that I don't own a necktie. But I do. Actually, I think this is the first time I've worn one since I became your pastor a few weeks ago. Today I'm beginning a sermon series from the Sermon on the Mount. Pastor Olivia just read for you Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 to 12. Some of you didn't hardly recognize that as the Beatitudes because it's from Eugene Peterson's, I want to say translation, but Eugene Peterson's is not a translation. It's his interpretation or paraphrase of what he understands Matthew 5, 1 to 12 to say. So this is the first in a series of sermons between now and December that we're going to be preaching from the Sermon on the Mount. And today, as you see on the back side of your bulletin, if you have it there in front of you, the title of the message is It's an Upside Down World. These are truths that I'm sharing with you this morning that are near and dear to every child of God, to every Christ follower. And these are what I would say very core truths that Christians believe and practice. But as I prepared this sermon this week, I would have to only say it this way: a sadness swept over me, because as I prepared this sermon, I had in mind two family members of ours, both young adults, who once would have heard a sermon like this and said, absolutely, this is what I believe, this is what I want to practice, couldn't help but, as I prepared this sermon, reflect on the fact that these two adults, both near and dear to my heart, have turned away from this, and if questioned today would say, I don't believe this any longer. And I'm sure that there's some of you here, my age or younger, who have loved ones. It's one thing, I think, to have family members outside the kingdom. It's another thing to have family members that once walked the way and now are saying, I don't think I believe it anymore. So there's a weight to this sermon to me this morning. The world out there, in many of the areas, the 8 areas that I want to talk to you about, this upside down world, the world's winning the battle. The world is winning the battle for the hearts of so many of our young adults, teens and young adults today. So let me talk to you now for a few minutes about it's an upside down world. Let's speak to the Father before we go to the Word. Father, forgive us for sometimes, too often perhaps, coming to church with expectations too low. We come expecting some pleasant music, maybe an entertaining sermon, and maybe a new truth might occur to us. And Father, sometimes we come and go with too little life change. But Father, your word was written, says the word speaking of itself, says it's sharper than a double-edged sword, able to pierce to the quick of my heart. Again, as you did this week, as I was in preparation for this morning. Father, may the word this morning be a double-edged sword, piercing to the quick. May it be also an encouragement, a light for our path, I pray. Speak to us all, I pray, about these truths. Change us today. This we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. I kind of miss the Peanuts comic strip, don't you? For years, Charles Schulz entertained us all with his pithy little comic strips, often a bit of theology, because he was a devoted Christ follower. This is one of those strips. Life is a mystery, Charlie Brown, Lucy says. Do you know the answer? Charlie Brown answers, be kind, don't smoke, be prompt, smile a lot, eat sensibly, avoid cavities, and mark your ballot carefully. Avoid too much sun, send overseas packages early, love all creatures above and below, ensure your belongings, and try to keep the ball low. Before he can get out one more platitude, Lucy interrupts and says, Charlie, hold real still because I am going to hit you a very sharp blow on the nose. Now everybody here and everybody out there has ideas about life, about how to live a happy and fulfilled life. And some of the ideas, don't know about you, but some of the ideas that I hear out there make me want to smack somebody on the nose. But I promise you I won't. Today we're going to look at the first 12 verses of Matthew chapter 5. And as I mentioned already, it's the beginning of the greatest sermon in all of the scriptures, the Sermon on the Mount. These verses I mentioned are commonly called the Beatitudes. Now, different translations phrase these famous sayings of Jesus differently. Some translations begin all 8 of these sayings with the words, many of you are used to hearing them this way, blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the humble. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst. And then there are other translations, some of the more modern translations don't use the blessed are, they say happy are those who mourn. Happy are the humble. Happy are those who hunger and thirst. The famous television pastor from some years ago, Robert Schuller, called the Beatitudes the be happy attitudes. He just separated the be and the attitudes and put happy in the middle. And as I reflect on that, that works. I believe that's quite accurate. But the truth is this morning that Jesus did lay out a blueprint here for the path to happiness. But before we start down that path this morning, I need to remind you that according to all of the world, what the world would say about these very things, it's an upside down world that Jesus is advocating. So if you have your outline in front of you this morning and want to follow along with me, I want you to notice two things first before we walk down through the 8 sayings. And here's the first thing, speaking of it being an upside down world. These words of Jesus are out of step with what our culture teaches. The words in the blank there in front of you are out of step. These words are out of step with what the world says, quite opposite with what the world considers to be the path to happiness. Come on, think about it. You'll be happy when you're poor? I don't think the world would agree with that one. That's just the flip opposite of what the world would say. You'll be happy when people put you down and lie about you? Don't think so. Don't think you'll find any agreement out there. Or this one, you'll be happy when you really get to know God, because stuff, money, possessions can never make you happy. The world doesn't agree with that. That's hardly our society's definition of the path to happiness. The American novelist Flannery O'Connor years ago paraphrased Jesus' words here in the Beatitudes to say this: "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you odd," is what she said. Not an accurate translation of what Jesus said, but there's some truth there. If you apply these teachings of Jesus to your life, you'll be an A+ disciple. You following me now? You'll be an A+ disciple, but indeed the world will think you're odd. But that would be okay, wouldn't it? But you will be happy. Yes, when you compare what Jesus is teaching to the world's priority, everything here in these 8 sayings is upside down. And here's the second thing I want you to notice by way of introduction. Here it is. These words of Jesus are hard words. I mean, they are hard words. These are hard truths. They're hard to hear, and they're even harder to live by. It's a difficult road. If you'll travel this road, you're going to find it's all uphill. And the world loves roads that are a coast, a downhill road. In Eugene Peterson's paraphrase of the first words of Matthew 5, we read these. This is just before the part that Pastor Olivia read to you. When Jesus saw his ministry drawing huge crowds, this is the opening words of Matthew 5, he climbed a hillside. Those who were apprenticed to him, the committed, would that be you? Apprenticed to Jesus, the committed, climbed with him. Arriving at a quiet place, he sat down and taught his climbing companions. I love the way he puts that. And this is what he said. So my question for you right off the bat this morning is this: would you consider yourself a climbing companion of Jesus Christ? Now, of course, these words that I just read to you refer to a physical climb up an actual mountain, the Sermon on the Mount, right? But I tell you now, if you would be truly happy, contented, if you would hear these words, if you would believe these words, if you would practice these words, I warn you now, it will be a hard climb. So, will you be a climbing companion of Jesus today? Come on, for a few minutes, let's climb together. It's an upside down world. So come with me now. Here's the first be happy attitude. And it's there before you. You just need to put one word in the blank. When you're at the end of your rope, that's good. You depend more on God. So the word in the blank is depend. Now, nobody that I know of out there thinks it's a good thing to be at the end of your rope. You all understand the phrase, at the end of your rope. It sort of means, I've tried everything. There are no answers. I don't see any solutions to what I'm facing, and I'm really frustrated. So what's the world's solution when you're at the end of the rope? You all know what it is. What's the world saying? When you're at the end of the rope, what do? Tie and hang on. I think I have a picture of that here. That's what the world says. That's what the world says. When you're at the end of the rope, there's nothing you can do. Just tie a knot in the rope and hang on for dear life and hope something better happens. But Jesus says, his upside down world, our upside down world, there is a solution when there's no solution. And it's not just hang on for dear life, it's take the hand of your Father in heaven. You see, some of us in this room have had to get to the end of our rope, the end of our own resources, to realize that God is our only hope. I visited a lady a while back, and when I say that, I hesitate to go on, I hasten to go on and say she doesn't live in this county, so don't be guessing. Her circumstances, by my definition, were absolutely desperate. She was, by her own words, at the end of her rope, but not willing to consider reaching out for the extended hand that's always there for us. I asked if I could pray. She gave me permission to pray, and when I finished my prayer, she said, I'll take help from any place I can get it, but then she made it very clear that she didn't mean God. What she was really saying was, I don't want to be dependent on God or anyone else. I am strong, I am independent, but might I add also, she's not happy. Obviously not happy. When you're at the end of your rope, Jesus said, that's good. You depend then on God more. Here's the second of the 8 sayings. When you lose what's dearest to you, God comes nearer to you. Not so different than the first saying, okay? When you lose what's dearest to you, God comes, the word in the blank, is nearer to you. Did you ever, maybe many of you in this room did watch the movie God's Not Dead? Many of you saw it. It's a story about a first-year college student who is challenged by his declared atheist professor to stand before the classroom and present his reasons for believing in God to the entire philosophy class. And near the end of the movie, we discover that it's not that the professor doesn't believe that there is a God, it's that he's mad at God. Because when his many fervent prayers for his mother, when he was about 12 years old, didn't work, according to him, and his mom died of cancer, he lost what was dearest to him, and he did the opposite of what Jesus is saying. He turned his back on God. If you would follow Jesus, it's a tough climb, this truth is. When you lose what's dearest to you, God comes nearer to you and becomes dear to you. Sarah and Jody are 2 young mothers in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. And these 2 young moms have something in common. Both lost a child to SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Many of you are aware of that. Some of you have loved ones who experienced that horror. And so what did they do? Just months after their tragedy in their home, they started a ministry. This is back in 2013, to other mothers across the province of Nova Scotia who had also lost a child to SIDS. They would take or mail, if possible, a box called a Hope Box. And it would be a box about shoebox size with items, poems, books, personal care items, and so on, to these grieving moms. I don't know if I've ever witnessed a better example of this beatitude in action. They lost what was dearest to them, and God came nearer to them, and they started this vital, excellent ministry to other moms who had experienced what they experienced. Here's the third saying. Be content with who you are. Then you will realize that's more important than what you have. The world says, oh, come on, not really. The world puts a tremendous value on what you have. You know that. The world is obsessed with what you have. Money, possessions, status, power, success, stuff. Money can buy you land, but not love. Love can purchase bonds, but not brotherhood. Money, stuff, gold, but not gladness. Silver, but not sincerity. Houses, but not homes. Real estate, but not righteousness. Hotels, but not heaven. Jesus is saying, take care of the inside you. Be content with who you are. Then you'll realize that's much more important than anything you will accumulate. Get it right here, is what Jesus is saying. And then you will realize you have it all. Here's the fourth saying. Seek God. He is your deepest hunger. He satisfies like nothing else. The world can't seem to grasp. The world can't seem to grasp that the hole down inside of every one of us is God-shaped. To put it another way, we could say life is a puzzle, and people all over this planet are trying to figure it out. When our daughter Kate was just 3 or 4 years old, she had one of those puzzles. You know what they're like. They're made for kids. Puzzle about so that the pieces are really quite large so that a child could put them together. And I'm standing and watching her one day, and she's struggling to put the puzzle together, and she's particularly wanting the piece that fits right in the middle. Well, I'm standing there and I'm looking and I see it, and I start to reach for the piece, and she says, "No, Dad." This would be so like Kate. "No, Dad, I want to do it all by myself." Those were her words. All by myself. And then she tries this one, and that one, and another one. And I was just a little bit frustrated because I could help her find the missing piece. Hear me this morning. I see people all around me, don't you? They're searching for what's missing in their life. And they think maybe if I left this relationship and moved into that relationship, that would be the missing piece in my life. And they try it, but it doesn't work. And then they try this pleasure. And then they sell a house and buy that house and move to that city and find that job, or they take this vacation. And they move from piece to piece to piece, and never finding that piece, because the piece, the hole in the center of every one of us, is God-shaped. It's Him. Here's the fifth saying. Reach out a helping hand to others. That results in a deep sense that you are truly cared for. Reach out a helping hand. That results in a deep sense that we are truly cared for. What I'm saying to you this morning, what Jesus is getting at here, is the best spiritual food that you will ever eat is not a great sermon that you sit and listen to. The best spiritual food you'll ever enjoy is not going to some concert somewhere that really inspires you and pumps you up and even enlightens you. The best spiritual food that you will ever eat, according to Jesus' upside-down world, is when you reach out and serve someone else, lend a helping hand, get involved in a ministry. It's when you give, not take, that you're really getting spiritually fed. For several weeks, Mrs. Symonds' first grade class had waited for the field trip to the observatory, and notices had been sent home with instructions about the bus, and every kid had to bring a lunch, and the note contained the times of departure and when the class would come back. To the students waiting for the field trip, for them it was like waiting for Christmas. And finally the day arrived, And the kids all grabbed their lunches and coats and lined up for the bus. And in the back of the room, one boy by the name of Chris began to cry because he'd forgotten to bring a lunch and would have to stay behind with another teacher in another classroom. And suddenly, without any instruction from the teacher, it happened. The first kid took half of his sandwich and brought it over and put it on Chris's desk. And then someone else brought a cookie, and someone else brought an apple. And before Chris was done, he had a bigger and a better and more elaborate lunch than any kid in the class. And Chris felt terrific. But you know who felt better than Chris? All of the kids in that class who contributed to that little classroom miracle on that day. You know the feeling. When you do something like that, when you reach out to help someone else, it's like you truly sense at that moment God's favor. It's as if, because you do, it's then you are fulfilling your life's purpose and God smiles on you. Here's number 6. Take care of your heart and mind. Then you can see God in the outside world. I have a sign in my office. I mentioned a few weeks ago, but this morning I brought it. It's getting old and tattered, but I've had it a long time. It simply says, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Not very complicated. You might wonder why I keep that around. That's one of the catchy sayings. Maybe you didn't know this, but that's one of those catchy sayings of a man. Now he has left us. His name was Yogi Berra. He was not a philosopher or a great writer. He was a catcher for the New York Yankees in the 1950s and into the 60s. But in his own garbled way, he said some very profound things. Well, maybe not some of them not so profound. One of the things he said was, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Yeah, well, that's not so profound, okay? Here's another one. You should go to other people's funerals, because if you don't go to theirs, they won't come to yours. Okay. Well, I don't know what those do, but listen to me this morning. On this one, Yogi had it right when he said the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. The problem is, all of us sometimes get a little bit confused about what is the main thing. Let me help you a little this morning. Keeping the main thing the main thing. Here's a good way to start your day. Father, give me a heart like yours today. This day, all day. Would you help me to think your thoughts? Would you help me to say the things that you would say? Would you help me to act the way you would act? Lord, let me see all the people around me today that I meet. Let me see them through your eyes. Now I'll tell you, that will take care of your inside world. And that will help you keep the main thing the main thing. And when you pray a prayer like that and mean it, you will begin to see, now hear me now on this. When you pray a prayer like that and mean it, you will begin to find the most annoying person in your world, the most distasteful person or even intolerable person in your world as someone that God greatly loves, and then you begin to feel towards them the way God feels towards them. It will happen, believe me, this morning. Some of you here in this room this morning, perhaps, you're having a problem. There's someone in your world. There's a relationship problem. I need to tell you this morning, without knowing any details. If you have a problem with a relationship with somebody in your world, it's primarily your problem, not theirs. Whether you caused it or you think they caused it, it's your problem. You've not taken care of your inside world according to Jesus. You still climbing with me today, or some of you stopped and sat down? Come on, stay with me now. Keep climbing. Here's saying number 7. Work to make peace in your world. That sure trumps the don't get mad, get even mentality. Number 7, I think we're up to. Okay? work to make peace in your world, that beats the, maybe I should leave Trump's name out of it there this morning. That beats the don't get mad, get even approach. Someone wisely observed, revenge is sweet to the taste, but it turns the stomach sour. The most miserable people in the world are the grudge holders, the revenge plotters, the resentful. Peacemakers, that's what Jesus is talking about here. Do peacemakers ever get angry? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Do you ever get angry? I'm sure that you do. But when peacemakers get angry, they settle down, and then what do? They don't get even. They go to anyone they have a problem with. Let me say that another way. Peacemakers would go to anyone with whom they have a problem, or they will go to anyone that they suspect has a problem with them. Some of us think the Christian thing is to do, if they come to me and ask for forgiveness, I'll forgive them. And the scripture advises us, that isn't what you do. You don't wait. If you suspect that someone out there has some issue with you, you take the initiative and you go to them. We forgive whether the offender asks to be forgiven or not. We forgive whether we feel like it or not. How often through the years have I had a believer say to me, well, Pastor John, I can't forgive them. I don't feel it. It has nothing to do with how you feel. Forgiveness is always a choice. And you forgive it, and then you forget it. Hasn't been a month since I had someone say, I can't forget what they did. Well, you will forget eventually if you stop talking about it. Refuse to ever mention it again to anyone in any circumstance. I'm going to stop talking about it. So how are you doing out there? You still climbing with me? One more rung on the ladder this morning and we'll stop. Okay, here it is, number 8. When you are put down, let's put that one up there, number 8. When you are criticized, and we could put other phrases in there, when you're put down, when you're lied about, then you know you are the real thing and heaven applauds. Now, Jesus is here speaking about people out there in the world that may make fun of you, criticize you, lie about you, or whatever, or say other things about you. Jesus is saying, when you're persecuted for following me, that's proof that you really are who you say you are, a Christian. And then, of course, I love the way Eugene Peterson finishes this verse. He says, and when you do that, when you rejoice that people are criticizing you or putting you down, heaven gives you a standing O. And O doesn't stand for odd there. It stands for ovation. Imagine that. Heaven gives you a standing ovation. Valens was a Roman emperor for 14 years, 1400 years ago. Eusebius was one of the strong Christians in those days. He was a bishop, one of the leaders in the early church at that time. When Emperor Valens threatened Eusebius with confiscation of all his goods, threatened him with torture, banishment from the kingdom, and even death, the courageous Eusebius replied with these words, he needs not fear confiscation who has nothing to lose, nor banishment to whom heaven is his country. He need not fear torments when his body can be destroyed at one blow, nor death, which is the only way to set him at liberty from sin and sorrow. You know what? As I read Eusebius' response, I think he had the real thing. I think he was the real thing, don't you? I wonder if I could respond like that under threat of death. Could I? Could you? Will heaven be applauding me? Will heaven be applauding you? These are hard truths this morning. It's a hard climb. It's an upside-down world. Jesus was teaching these truths on one occasion, according to the writer of the Gospel, John, and at the end of his teaching, John records these words. Jesus had just been teaching hard truth, and John says, chapter 6, verse 66, From this time on, many of his disciples turned back and followed him no longer. What about you this morning? Still climbing? Will you climb with me? Will you? Many heard Jesus teaching, I'm sure, on this occasion. Sermon on the Mount. Some think maybe he was speaking to 4,000 to 6,000 people on this occasion. And I'm sure, no doubt, on this occasion too, many heard it and thought, I'm out of here. Not doing that. Not living that way. I won't do it. What about you? Will you climb? Would you stand with me for closing prayer? Father God, some sermons are easy, even fun to preach, and some aren't so much fun. Some are hard truth. This is hard truth, but it's your truth, and it is truth. Holy Spirit of God, would you speak to us now? We prayed before this message, before church, last night, this week. Father, may your truth actually be a double-edged sword. And I believe this morning that your sword has pierced to the quick of hearts this morning. And truth is being applied. And some here, even as I speak now, are repenting and asking for your forgiveness, as it should be. Father, let us be committed climbers to follow you, no matter how hard the truth, no matter how opposite it seems to what we're hearing every day in media, Hollywood media, across this globe, newscasters and all the rest are saying so many things that are just opposite to what Jesus said. Let that not deter us, I pray, from being climbers. Now, Father, as we leave this room and go and enjoy soup and sandwich together, may your blessing be upon our fellowship. Bless this food to our body's use, we pray. In Jesus' name, and all God's people said. Amen. Now, some of you forgot or didn't bring soup and sandwich, but Ronnie's telling me we may have to do this again next week because we can't eat all food. So even if you didn't bring something, come on, stay and eat with us, okay? God bless you. Join us, everyone.